2024 is the year of the tight end in fantasy football. These are my top 12 going into the season, and let me tell you, they fall off very quick, so you want to lock in one of the early round studs. Unlike in years past, we don't have a Travis Kelce in the first or second round. The first tight end is Sam Laporta going in the third round. But we have a lot of great ones going in the mid rounds, and that's where I want to target them. So starting off, I'm going TJ Hockenson at 12. Every tight end that I have listed below him is complete garbage by every advanced metric from last season. The idea with Hockenson is he's going to win you the fantasy football playoffs. He's going to come back late in the season from that injury and finally return to form in a good offense, hopefully by that time. And for most of the year, you'll be using guys like Cade Otton and Jawan Johnson to get you through the weeks, maybe a Hunter Henry, but he's the guy in TJ Hockenson that's going to win you the playoffs. 11 is David Njoku, and he had two totally different halves to the season. With Deshaun Watson, he averaged 8.3 points per game, complete garbage. Over the last 4 weeks with Joe Flacco, he averaged 21.4. Towards the end of the season, the offense completely changed and was very pass heavy, but he was kind of in a weird situation where he kind of played like a running back. He had a pathetic yards per target of 4.6 yards, which was 35th in the league. And with Nick Chubb likely to come back pretty soon in this season, I don't see him being used the same way, which could be good for him. For a guy this athletic, I want to see him used more down the field in ways that Kyle Pitts and George Kittle are used. His fantasy season completely depends on this new offense with Deshaun Watson. Number 10 is Jake Ferguson, and my God, was he pretty bad actually. He was number 1 in the league with 25 red zone targets. He had 5 touchdowns. That cannot happen again. He was number 15 in yards per route run. All his advanced metrics were not great. He's just one of those types of running back situations where he put in, gets all the volume, gets all the work, but he just isn't that great of a talent. Kind of like Kyren Williams, but Kyren showed last year that he could actually do stuff with that work. Jake Ferguson needs to do that, show he's the clear number 2 option this year, take over the Brandon Cook stuff, and really dominate targets. Number 9 is the complete opposite. It's Evan Ingram, who was number 1 in targets at 143, but was barely used at all in the red zone. The offense should be more downfield now with Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. because Calvin Ridley was constantly being double teamed since Zay Jones kept missing time. I don't know if you guys kept up with it last year, but every game that Zay Jones played, Calvin Ridley was way better because he finally could do his thing. Not to mention Christian Kirk missed a good half of the year last year. That gave Evan Ingram a lot of extra work. I think he was a big product of the situation he was in last year, which has completely changed. Kirk is back, totally different receivers on the outside. I don't think Ingram is that guy. 8 is Brock Bowers, and we do not get to do this every single year. He's the most talented tight end of all time as a prospect, and he's going after pick 110. It was just a couple years ago that we were drafting Kyle Pitts in a worse situation in the 3rd round. Why are we not doing something similar? Now, I was actually out on Kyle Pitts for every year so far in the league, but in Brock Bowers' situation, I actually think that Gardner Minshew can easily pepper him with targets. I keep saying this last year, but for Michael Pittman, he had 9.9 targets per game with Minshew. That is massive, and I know Devontae is going to do his thing, but Brock has room to be that wide receiver 2 in this offense. I just don't want to look back at this year when he's around 2 or 3 pick for every year of his career after this and be like, how did I miss that when he was in the 110s going basically for free? The Raiders are guaranteed to come up with schematic things for him to get wide open. 7 is Kyle Pitts, and this is the first year where I'm like, okay, I'm fine with you drafting him in the 7th or 6th round if you really want to, but last year, still not good by any metric, but I'm going to blame that obviously on the team situation. Not good, terrible coaching, terrible quarterback play, but mainly on his knee injury that isn't talked about enough. He was not really able to turn on that knee, which he had operated on that summer previous. No one really made a big deal out of it, but his cuts were not the same. This led him to only run downfield routes. He was number 1 in total air yards and number 1 in unrealized air yards because his quarterback play was so trash they just could not hit it. And he had 5 total red zone targets, which was 34th in the league. That better go up with Kirk Cousins. 6 is Dalton Kincaid. He was number 2 in slot snaps. That's a great thing for tight ends to have, but he was number 16 in red zone targets. Not very good. His 6 yards per target last year ranked 28th in the league. That has to go up to at least 7, maybe even 8 for him to be more prominent this season, but Stephon Diggs is leaving. He has to be the wide receiver 1 in this offense if things are going to change. I don't think that Keon Coleman is that talented or that guy. I think this offense really revolves around him, but I'm a little worried that his red zone usage won't go up that much because Josh Allen loves so much to run in the red zone. 5 is Sam Laporta, technically the tight end 1 last year, but I'm not buying it. He's still great, but he's not the tight end 1. His average depth of target was 7.1 yards. This is 14th in the league. He's competing with Amon-Ra for all those short to intermediate routes, and he doesn't have that big downfield game-breaking ability that George Kittle, Kyle Pitts, all these more athletic tight ends have. He led the league in touchdowns with 10. This hard carried his fantasy average last year. He actually didn't even average the most points per game. He was 3rd in that category, and he was just very efficient on his red zone targets, those should actually regress in a negative way. I have other guys that I think are going to regress harder in a positive way. One of those guys is number 4. It's Trey McBride. This guy had totally different seasons when Zach Ertz was there and Kyler Murray was hurt versus when Kyler was back with no Ertz. Before week 10, he was averaging 6.9 points per game before Kyler came back. After Kyler was back, 14.9 points per game. That would be the tight end 1 on the season. He was number 2 in yards per route run and number 5 in target separation, both stats you love to see out of a tight end. I think he's talented and athletic enough, and I'm not worried about Marvin Harrison joining this offense. If anything, that just makes it more efficient overall, and teams can't over-focus on him. If you want to put him higher, I honestly have no problem with it. Number 3 is George Kittle, the best overall tight end in the league. He had the most yards last year, the second most tight ends. He was number 1 in yards per route run, number 1 in yards per reception, number 1 in deep targets, number 2 in snap share overall for tight ends. Where he has room to improve is his red zone usage. He had the 10th most targets in the league for tight ends. Not great. The year before, on the other hand, he did score 11 touchdowns, 5 more than this year. I mean, it's just pretty random for tight ends, but I think he's going to be used enough in this offense where he has 8 to 9 upside. A real big thing is they may lose Brandon Ayuk. He's their main deep threat, and as I said, George Kittle is being used heavily down the field, 15.9 yards per reception. That is insane. If Ayuk leaves, he's going to be getting most of the deep targets. Number 2 is Mark Andrews, and these stats are absolutely crazy. He was number 6 in red zone targets at 14 while missing 8 games last year. That is insane. He was number 3 in yards per route run, so he was still very efficient. I think this dude could go for like 12 to 14 touchdowns if he really wants to this season. What other red zone threats do they have besides the run game and Derrick Henry? He's the only pass game option they really have. And number 1 is obviously Travis Kelce. He came to the season hurt, didn't use him that well. They benched him in week 18 to keep him healthy. He obviously would have led the league in tight end receiving yards. He also had 21 red zone targets, and that was number 2 in the league while missing multiple games. And somehow he only had 5 touchdowns last season. I'm telling you, this offense will throw for like 50 to 55 this year. It's going to be completely insane. Mahomes will probably be MVP again, as he should be every year. And Kelce will likely score 10 plus touchdowns again. I've already ranked my top 12 wide receivers and running backs. Go check that out. Next up is going to be quarterbacks. Drop a like and a comment on this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Drop a follow. Peace.